Well, hello everyone. Hope you're well. We're looking today at more of the cult manipulation. This is part two, really, because we already did one before. We're going to look at a particular method, and it should highlight some of the tactics that are used by the enemy in that, because these things are all around. Now, just before we do that, remember this video I did with Jezebel and the manipulation that Jezebel inflicts, like a narcissistic manipulation, when they put you in this security box and you're surrounded by all of these different methods and tactics of manipulation. This is actually very similar, this diagram, to how the cults operate. Now, all you need to really do is change that, change the word Jezebel there into cult leader, or dare I say it, pastor. And when it's this unhealthy paradigm, you will have a lot of these particular methods surrounding you that will be going on. And so you got push, pull, hot, cold, idealize, discard, gaslighting, mind games, undermining, insult. I mean, this topic is very close to my heart because I know someone who I know at least two people who are basically part of what I would say are cults. Minor cults, not major, minor cults. And so it's very close to my heart because it's terrible to see people get stuck. Well-meaning individuals get stuck in this paradigm. And so I say undermine and insult. Well, one of the people that I know it was basically implied to them by a pastor. He implied that they were a dog. And that was something, he didn't say it directly, but that's just one of the ways that they just get this undermining and insulting. Insecurity, low self-esteem, you find a lot of the eternal insecurity teachings are in amongst this, which is why I fundamentally disagree with the teaching of eternal insecurity, because it further, well, you can see the way it's used here. Sexual temptation, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. If it's not financial exploitation, then at the even more extreme, you can then get sexual exploitation. So that's basically what I wanted to just quickly show you, this whole Jezebel video I did before. You can actually liken it to these cults. Now let's look at this method called BITE. Behavioral control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. This highlights 4 different categories of control that this cult will be inflicting on the person. Maybe not every single element is there, but pretty much this is pretty much the gist of what we're looking at. Let's go firstly to this influence continuum. Now, on this graph, you've got, so this is from the BITE model, behavioural, information, thought, and emotional control. You've got on the left, you've got constructive and healthy, and on the right, you've got destructive and unhealthy. So on the left, we've got what a healthy church, a healthy movement, a healthy group should entail. And on the right, we've got what a cult, an unhealthy group, church, will involve. So on the left, this top one is for individuals. So this is for individuals. This is you in the group. In a healthy group, you are encouraged to be your authentic self. You're given unconditional love. You're practicing of the conscience. creativity and humour, freedom for creativity and humour, and free will and critical thinking. Why not? Because you should be able to critically think if you don't agree with something. On the other side, we've got the false cult identity. So instead of authentic self, you have a false cult identity. Instead of unconditional love, you have conditional love. Instead of conscience, you have doctrine, indoctrinated. Instead of creativity and humour, you have solemnity, fear and guilt. Instead of free will and critical thinking, you have dependency and obedience. Now that is very similar, like the dependency, to what we said before about infantilization, disinhibition, encouraging childlike obedience. And so you see that there, the healthy versus unhealthy. Now let's have a look at the cult leader second. This is what it's like for cult leaders. It should be psychologically healthy, but in a cult it's narcissistic and psychopathic. The leader should know their own limits, but in a cult they are elitist and grandiose. They are full of themselves. They should empower individuals, but in cults they are power hungry. They should be trustworthy. In cults they're secretive and deceptive. They should be accountable, but they claim absolute authority in cults. So there you go. And then you've got organisations. I mean, free to leave at the bottom there. Free to leave. You're not free to leave in a cult. They will bend any which way to keep you trapped in the cult. Yeah, so checks and balances, informed consent, individuality, diversity, means create end, encourages growth, free to leave. In cults, it's authoritarian structure, deceptive and manipulative, clones people. Just a bunch of clones. The ends justify the means, preserves own power, and gives you no legitimate reasons to leave. From Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan. So there we go. This is the healthy versus unhealthy, and I think I've got some more here. I mean, you would not believe. Okay, we're going to go on to it in there. You would not believe one of these. Someone I met in Jerusalem, who's part of what I would say is like a smaller cult in the UK, which is called a church, but it's a cult, really. She has to run everything by them, and I could not believe, like, even the decisions like going to university and which one to go to. She has to run it by the church. She has to run everything, like new relationships, going to university, which one to go to. Big major life decisions have to be run by the church, by the group. It's a real groupthink, and then the people in charge have such an authoritarian structure that they have absolute authority. And this is what it's like, this authoritarian structure. Wow. Anyway, so there's another continuum here, very similar to the last one, but I just find it quite interesting how it sums it up. Constructive and destructive again. The leadership should be honest, trustworthy, accountable and transparent, but in fact in the cults the leadership clones people. It enforces obedience to the leaders of the cult and fosters dependency and creates fear and phobia. FOG, F-O-G, fear, obligation and guilt. They are the three main methods of controlling someone in an abusive relationship. And so you can take psychopathic, narcissistic, Jezebel, if you want to call it that, abuse structure in a relationship, and you can liken that to how these systems operate in cults, because essentially it's the same thing, just on a different scale. And I've been on both sides of that. Just on a side note, I've been on both sides of that in relationships in my own life. I've been both in that box, in the victim box, and I've also been a perpetrator, I'm sad to say. So I understand from both sides. I understand now it takes a while to figure these things out in life, but I understand now that it's very unhealthy, and I've seen it from both sides as I've been part of that. So that's why I kind of understand a little bit about it. Anyway, here on the left we have a healthy leadership will respect the uniqueness of person, individuality, choice, free will, free access to information, and they will be sincerely loving. So you'll be allowed to question, you'll be allowed access to information in your own time to reason with what they're telling you. You'll be allowed to decipher whether you agree with them or not. You'll be allowed to look at things, information outside of the group. And you'll have your free choice, free will, individuality is encouraged. Whereas on the unhealthy side, there'll be censorship. Now, I don't agree with this second point, doctrine over personal experience. That's the only thing I don't agree with on here, because personal experience over doctrine is actually Gnosticism, so I don't quite know what this is getting at here. But third one, pressure to think the right way, pressure to feel the right way, pressure to behave the right way. So this is the BITE model: behaviour, information, thought and emotion. And then, of course, you've got organisations, which I'm not going to go into, but pyramid schemes, all of that kind of thing. Let's go on to this last one. This is a really detailed analysis of the BITE model. So let's look at behavioural control. Promote dependence and obedience, making you like a child. Modifying behaviour with rewards and punishments. That push-pull, like kneading a piece of dough. It's mixed messages that are rewarding and punishing the same behaviours. So it adds confusion to the mix. Dictate where and with whom you live. Look, here you go. You're going now into this behavioural control about controlling the decisions people make, interfering in their life on a micromanaging level. Dictating where and with whom you live. Restrict or control sexuality. I've even seen the ones where they tell married couples that you can't sleep together, that you have to be take a chastity vow even if you're married. The Bible talks about that, forbidding to marry. It's not biblical. And I've seen examples of pastors who are on the unhealthy level talking way too much about their own sexuality, talking way too much with members of their congregation about deep personal issues and restriction of sexuality and all sorts of, for married couples. Controlling clothing and hairstyle, similar to Hebrew roots, what we spoke about before. Regulate what and how much you eat and drink. I mean, fasting is one thing, but sometimes it seems a bit over the top from what I've seen. That can get over the top and just become about control. There's nothing wrong with personal fasting or even group fasting if needs be, but when it becomes like a dictatorship and it's almost every other day, deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep, exploit you financially, restrict leisure time and activities, overworking you, making you completely beholden to them, require you to seek permission for major decisions. There you go. Require you to seek permission for major decisions, such as where you're going to go to university, who you're going to marry, all of these different types of things, what you're going to have for breakfast. It's, we laugh, but it's not a joke, because there are pastors and cult leaders who actually do that. Now remember, we're not talking about every pastor here. We're not talking about every church here. That's certainly not the case, because there are healthy churches out there. They are not all like this. So please remember that there are good churches. This is not an attack on the church. But there are some churches and some movements and some groups that are abusive. And remember, so exploit you financially, that it doesn't just stop there. Sometimes it becomes even worse than that. It's spiritual abuse, financial abuse, and sometimes even sexual abuse. Verbal abuse. All of the classic emotional abuse tactics, and even sometimes physical abuse. It's awful. Information control. Deliberately withhold and distort information. Gaslighting. Gaslighting. Just like that Jezebel diagram. Forbid you from speaking with ex-members and critics. Well, there you go, of course. I've seen this. I've seen this in action. I've seen some of these groups, in particular the ones I'm thinking of, that, I mentioned that I know a couple of people at least who are in unhealthy groups, and they do inadvertently forbid them from speaking with ex-members and critics. This is not Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses that we're talking about here. We're talking about churches here. We're talking about actual churches, not none of the major cults. I don't know anyone who is a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness, but I know some people in so-called Christian churches where this happens. Discourage access to non-cult sources of information. Information control. Divide information into insider versus outsider doctrine. Generate and use propaganda extensively. Use information gained in confession sessions against you. Gaslight to make you doubt your own memory. Require you to report thoughts, feelings and activities to superiors, and encourage you to spy and report on others' misconduct. So you see how they brainwash you and control the information you have access to, discourage you from looking outside of the box or speaking with anyone that's outside of the box. Very subtly, they chip away at your autonomy and make you completely boxed in. Thought control. Instill black versus white, us versus them, and good versus evil thinking. Change your identity, possibly even your name. Use loaded language and cliches to stop complex thought. Induce hypnotic or trance states to indoctrinate. Teach thought-stopping techniques to prevent critical thoughts. Allow only positive thoughts, the power of positive thinking. Use excessive meditation, singing, prayer and chanting to block thoughts. This is... it's crazy. And lastly, emotional control. Instill irrational fears, phobias of questioning or leaving in the group. Now, everyone has got this group mentality. Everyone has got the need to belong, so they exploit the need to belong. That's an innate desire, natural desire within each of us to belong to the pack, right? To the group. And that's a good thing in fellowship, in Christianity, in true Christianity. You have fellowship, and that fulfills that innate desire to be part of a community. We're community, because remember, the Godhead is a community. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Family, a family. So we all have a desire to be part of a family. But this exploits the need to belong, so you're scared to lose the family if you don't toe the party line. You're scared to be chucked out. And that is as they said before, in years gone by, that was a much worse punishment to have the threat of being excommunicated than anything else. So instill irrational fears and phobias of questioning or leaving the group. Label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful or wrong. Teach emotion-stopping techniques to prevent anger, homesickness. Yeah, I can see that. Promote feelings of guilt, shame and unworthiness. Shower you with praise and attention, love bombing. Threaten your friends and family, shun you if you disobey or disbelieve. Teach that there is no happiness or peace outside the group. So there we go. That's the BITE method. Behaviour, information, thought and emotion. So quite a lot of information to take in there, but if you're stuck in one of these, I pray that you will get out, and I hope that those people that I know are listening, and you will take this advice and see it for what it is, because it's very difficult to see it when you're in it. But I just hope and pray that the Lord opens your eyes to see it. And if you know anyone, people listening, if you know anyone, please show them this video and help them to undo some of that brainwashing and mind control. So, God bless you all. Let's stay healthy. And let's stay above board and get out of anything that's cultish and turn towards the Lord. Remember, Christ is not the head of a cult. Christ is the head of the church. And the Christian church, in its true form, is not a cult. It doesn't work by manipulation. That's not how it works. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all.